What's going on, movie fans? My name is Michael Weir. I love talking about movies, and today we're going to talk about the latest Agatha Cristy novel adaptation, A Haunting in Venice. This is the third Agatha Cristy novel adaptation movie in the last several years. The first one we got was Murder on the Orient Express, and it was directed and starred Kenneth Branagh in the lead role. It also had Johnny Depp, Josh Gad, and several other big-name stars in that movie, and I really enjoyed that movie. Thought it was a great detective movie, loved the twist end, the whodunit aspect was sort of thrown on its head, and I like when a genre movie can really shake up the genre. I liked it so much, in fact, that when Death on the Nile came out, I put that movie on my top 10 most anticipated movies of the year list. I was really looking forward to it. It again had a star-studded cast with Kenneth Branagh returning in the lead role, also directing the movie. You had Gal Gadot in that movie and Armie Hammer, which is one of the reasons that movie was delayed, because of the allegations against him, plus the COVID delays that delayed everything. But when we got to 2022, I put it on my most anticipated movie of the year list, and it made my top 10 worst movies of the year 2022 because it was so bad. I mean, it was incredibly boring, but the graphics in the movie, because they're on the Nile, were like PlayStation 2 graphics. It was such a letdown of a movie. I couldn't believe what I was watching in the theater, and it was just a step down from Murder on the Orient Express. So going into A Haunting in Venice, I sort of looked at the series as a one-in-one, because a really good movie out of Murder on the Orient Express, movie I've rewatched over the years, and now you have Death on the Nile that I won't even put on my shelves back there, and I'm a completist, but I won't put it on my shelves because there's no way I'll ever watch that movie again. And so going into Haunting in Venice, I thought they have a unique opportunity here to continue to turn that genre on its head by adding a horror aspect into the detective genre. Then I watched the movie, and they took all the same missteps as Death on the Nile with another talented cast. That's going to be on the thumbnail. That's good. Okay. With that said, let's get into my review for A Haunting in Venice.
No one shall leave until I find if the living have been killed by the dead.
And so, guys, like I said, Kenneth Branagh returns to direct this movie. He also stars in this movie as the lead detective on the case, whose name I can't pronounce, and I won't even try it. It also stars Michelle Yeoh from Everything Everywhere All at Once, and the other two actors of note would be Tina Fey and Kelly Reilly, who we will get to in a little bit. Let's talk about the synopsis for this movie. You have the world's greatest detective, or really self-proclaimed world's greatest detective, who has, since the Death on the Nile incident, gone into a sort of retirement phase. He doesn't take any more cases, even though people seek him out. He wants to live out his days in Venice, eating cakes on the top of his building, overlooking the entire city. And that's just what he wants to do. So that is where he is set up. And then his doorbell rings, and Tina Fey is there, who turns out to be not only an old friend, but a journalist. And she says, I'm going to this seance tonight, and if it's real, I'm going to write a story about it, and it's going to be great. And if it's not real, I kind of want you there to disprove it. And one thing leads to another. She convinces him to come out into the world, go to this seance. They get there. They get to this seance scene, which is the best scene in the entire movie, and something we'll talk about here in a minute. And then there is a murder, setting up the events for A Haunting in Venice. Now, if that sounds like an interesting concept to you, if it sounds like something you would like to watch on the big screen, well, it's in theaters right now. And I always recommend going and checking things out in theaters, even though I don't recommend that you watch this movie at all. For the record, I don't support this movie at all. It's bad. But let's get into my likes and my dislikes. There is one like for this movie, so I'll start with that. And that is that scene I talked about, that seance scene. Michelle Yeoh in that scene is terrifying. I thought that it was done so well. And that might be because I'm in the spooky season right now. You know, it's late September. We are ready to talk about spooky stuff from now till the end of October, and maybe even the very beginning of November. You know how it is. But I'm ready for it, and I love seance scenes in movies, and so I was hoping that that scene would work for me as well as it did in the trailer, and it sure did. There weren't many people at my theater seeing this movie when I saw it at 1 o'clock on a Tuesday, but I could tell that all of us were kind of creeped out in that moment, because the movie plays as a detective movie throughout the entire movie, but that one scene has this haunted aspect to it that really, really worked. Now, one scene out of a 2-hour movie does not make a good movie, but I'm just giving the movie praise for where it's due, and that 100% is where it's due. I will also say that this isn't going to go into the like category, but I thought Michelle Yeoh did a good job with her character. That's it. Moving on to the dislikes. The first dislike I have for this movie is going to be Tina Fey. Just being honest, straight up with you, as much as I enjoyed Michelle Yeoh's performance for the time that she's in this movie, getting into Tina Fey's performance, she is a great comedic actor. I can't deny that. Anything she's in that's a comedy, she can sell comedy very well. She did very well for herself in that genre. Getting into a detective movie where she's supposed to be this straight-laced journalist trying to write a story, it doesn't work for me because every line she delivers, she kind of delivers with this comedic tone, this comedic way. It's just the way she acts. It's the way she's made her money over the years. So when she tries to be a part of these serious moments in this detective, murder, horror genre movie where she needs to be serious, everything comes off as a joke. It just does. It's just the way she delivers her lines. So that didn't work for me. Also, her character in general didn't work for me. This journalist that was so excited to write this story, but she was skeptical anyway, and she was going to write a story either way, and Detective Poirot owed her. It was a really lame way, in my opinion, to get him out of his hibernation and back into the world. I wish that a case would have drawn him out. As someone who was so invested in the detective world, it would have been interesting for him to be rejecting all these cases, but then find one that catches his eye. To me, that would have been better. And also there was a subplot in Death on the Nile, like a whole subplot. And this is something that was in that movie, so I won't knock this movie for it. But there was a whole subplot about why he didn't eat his mustache anymore. He was scarred, so that's why he grew out the mustache. And then he shaves it at the end of the movie, and he's like, I don't need it anymore. And then they open this movie immediately, and he's got the mustache back. And it's like, well, of course he does, because that's his thing for these movies. But he got rid of the mustache in Death on the Nile. I don't know. To me, that didn't work at all. The next problem I have with this movie are the characters in this movie. Like, in Murder on the Orient Express, all of the people on that train were travelers. And then you find out, and this is spoilers for Murder on the Orient Express, that all of them had a hand in the murder of Johnny Depp in that movie because Johnny Depp was an evil gangster and he had harmed them all in some way. So they all were part of that murder. And when Poirot finds that out, he's like, not really sure what to do here, so I'm going to leave. And that's how that movie ends, but I liked that. Whereas in this movie, the characters in this movie that are at the seance, they all make sense for why they're there, but it took me almost the entire movie to figure out exactly who they were because they do a very poor job explaining, oh, this is this person and this is why he's in the house. This is this person, this is why she's in the house. They did a very poor job explaining outside of a few people, like you have Michelle Yeoh as the seance lady, you have Tina Fey as the journalist, you have Kenneth Branagh as the detective, you have Kelly Riley as the mother of a girl who is deceased that they're trying to reach beyond the grave. But then there's like 10 more people in this house, and it took me the whole movie to figure out why they were in that house instead of kind of explaining to us right off the bat so that I could keep track of everyone's motives to be in this house and then commit a murder on that seance night. But diving deeper into my irritation with the characters is anytime you would get a backstory of these characters or they would have these long, very long-winded conversations with Poirot about what they did in their life and why they ended up at this house tonight, they would just do this zoom in camera shot of their face and they would go on and on and on and on. Instead of showing things that happened in the past, no, they would just zoom in on the character's face and then just have them talk and talk. It was a really weird thing I noticed at the beginning of the movie, and I don't remember that being Kenneth Branagh's style in the previous movie, so I don't know if he was trying something new here, but there's so many up-close face shots of the actors that at first I thought, well, are they not filming in the same location? Like, are these pickup shots? They were like, oh, we got to get these in the movie really quick because we meant to film it like this, or it would come off better like this, so we just zoomed in on the actor's face. That's what I thought. But then they do it the entire movie, and by the end of the movie, you're just so irritated that the giant IMAX screen I'm watching is filled with this person's up-close face. It didn't work at all. I hated that camera work, and that's another thing I didn't like about the movie. The movie is just plain boring. I get that you have to have a setup for this movie, but it takes so long to get from where Poirot is retired detective all the way till there's a murder at the seance house and now he's back on the case. It took forever to get to that point, and they were having to build because they decided, oh, he's retired. They had to build a way for him to get out into the world, and then they had to build a thing for him to have to be at, and then they had to be at that thing for a while he's noticing different little things and different people around doing his detective thing, and it just took forever to get to that murder. Once the murder happens, the movie takes forever in the next two acts to get to who the murderer was. And then, of course, because, like I said before, they're exploring all these characters' backgrounds, to let Poirot build a case in his head. Which leads me to my final dislike of this movie. Can we stop saying that Poirot is the world's greatest detective, please? Because all this guy does in the entire movie, after being retired, all he does in the entire movie is question people and accuse them, including his own security guard that has been with him for how many years. He goes up to people and he blocks them in a room and he just makes them confess because he knows that they did it. And then they didn't do it. Someone screams on the other side of the house and they all run out. And I will say this, maybe it's a spoiler. There's one murderer in this movie, just one. And he accuses every single person in this movie, except for maybe the kid. He accuses every single one of them as being the murderer leading up to the reveal at the end of the movie. He's like, so I know you did it and this is how I know. And I'm like, you're not the world's greatest detective. Like, you can't call yourself that anymore. Look, overall in this movie, guys, I did like the seance scene. I thought that was a good haunted moment in the movie. But like I said before, one scene does not make a great movie. Every other aspect of this movie, whether it's your lead character in Detective Poirot, your side characters like Tina Fey or Kelly Riley, who just didn't work for me, your overall plot and the reason there was a murder in the first place didn't work for me. And then there's one tiny little reveal at the end that I won't spoil here that is just the dumbest subplot that the movie could have. If you've seen the movie, you know it comes right at the end when people are leaving the house after the murderer has been detected. It's bad. I just think that it was a waste of my time to go to the theater and see it. So like I said before, if you're a theater person, you've got to see it in the theater. Go check this movie out. Otherwise, I would recommend waiting for this thing on streaming or skipping it altogether because it's really not worth your time. And unfortunately, this movie will probably end up on the worst movies of the year list, but it's still early. It's still September. We've got a lot of movies that could fill out those slots, so we will see. With all that said though, guys, those are my thoughts and that's my review for A Haunting in Venice. Guys, if you've seen this movie and you've got thoughts and you've got comments, maybe you agree or disagree with the things that I said in this review, throw those in the comment section down below because I'd love to know your thoughts on this movie. And finally, guys, if you like this review, don't forget to hit that like button because it helps the video, it helps the channel, and it helps me right here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Alright guys, we got to the end of A Haunting in Venice, the least scary of all the horror movies that I'm sure will come out between now and the end of October, which are quite a few. I'm looking forward to The Exorcist, I'm looking forward to Saw, I'm really looking forward to Five Nights at Freddy's. I think all those are going to be good. And then the end of the year, we get some really cool movies. We've got Nicolas Cage coming out in a movie called Dream Scenario that looks really good. We've also got Napoleon starring Joaquin Phoenix, directed by Ridley Scott. Have a lot of hope for those movies. So there's a lot of good movies yet to come. And I'm hoping that all of those movies I just mentioned are great. But I tell you what, guys, if you liked this and you want to check out more of my reviews, well, you can check out any of my 2022 reviews right there. There is a Death on the Nile in there if you're interested. And you can check out all of my 2023 reviews right there.